Dr. Elena Vasquez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she looked at the strange metal door buried in the red sand. She had been digging on this dead planet for 3 weeks now, and this was the biggest find yet. The door was smooth and black, with symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the alien sun. "Professor, you need to see this," called out Jake, one of her students. He was standing near a hole they had dug earlier that morning. His voice sounded excited but also worried. Elena walked over and looked down into the hole. What she saw made her heart race. Below the sand was a room made of the same black metal as the door. Strange lights moved along the walls like living things. In the center of the room was a large box that looked like it was made of crystal and metal mixed together. "How deep does it go?" Elena asked. "We don't know yet," Jake replied, "but the walls seem to go down at least 20 feet. And Professor, there's something else. The air down there, it's breathable, like someone has been keeping it fresh for a very long time." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. This planet had been dead for millions of years. Nothing lived here. Nothing should be able to keep air fresh for so long. "Get the climbing gear," she said. "We're going down." 2 hours later, Elena stood inside the strange room. Up close, she could see that the walls were covered in pictures and symbols. They showed tall figures that looked almost human, but different somehow. The figures wore strange armor and carried weapons that seemed to bend light around them. The crystal box in the center was even more amazing up close. Inside, Elena could see the shape of a person lying still. The person looked human, but the armor they wore was like nothing she had ever seen. It seemed to be made of a material that shifted between metal and liquid. "Professor," whispered Sarah, another student, "look at this." Sarah was pointing at a panel next to the crystal box. The panel had symbols on it, and some of them were glowing. Without thinking, Elena reached out and touched one of the glowing symbols. The room suddenly filled with light. The walls began to hum with energy, and the pictures on them started to move like videos. Elena and her team watched in amazement as the moving pictures showed great ships flying between the stars, and battles fought in the darkness of space. Then something happened that made Elena's blood run cold. A beam of light shot up from the crystal box through the ceiling and into the sky above. The beam was so bright that it could probably be seen from space. "What did you do?" Jake asked, his voice full of fear. "I don't know," Elena said, "but I think we just sent a signal to someone." She was right. Far above the planet, in the cold darkness of space, 3 different groups of ships detected the signal. Each group belonged to a different alien race, and each race had been waiting for this signal for a very long time. The first ships to arrive belonged to the Zephyrians. They looked like they were made of living crystal, and they sang to each other with voices like wind chimes. The Zephyrians had been searching for signs of the first ones for thousands of years. When they saw the signal from the planet below, their excitement was so great that their ships glowed brighter than stars. The second group belonged to the Korthak. These aliens looked like giant insects, but they thought with one shared mind. Their ships were dark and moved like hungry predators through space. The Korthak had ancient stories about beings who had taught them how to think as one. They called these beings the Great Teachers, and they had been looking for any trace of them for generations. The third group was the strangest of all. The ethereals had no solid bodies. They were made of pure energy, and their ships looked like they were built from captured lightning. Long ago, before they had learned to leave their physical forms behind, wise beings had shown them the secrets of energy and light. They called these ancient teachers the Lightbringers. All 3 groups of aliens believed that the signal was coming from a sacred place left behind by their ancestors, and all 3 groups wanted to be the first to claim it. Down on the planet, Elena and her team had no idea what was coming. They were too busy trying to understand what they had found. The moving pictures on the walls told an incredible story. They showed humans, or beings that looked very much like humans, traveling to different worlds and helping alien races grow and learn. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah said. "These pictures show humans doing things thousands of years before we even left Earth." Elena nodded. The pictures were confusing and amazing at the same time. They showed humans teaching aliens how to build cities, how to travel through space, and how to live in peace with each other. But humans had only been in space for a few hundred years, not thousands. "Maybe they're not humans," Jake suggested. "Maybe they just look like us." Elena was about to answer when the ground began to shake. She looked up and saw lights in the sky. At first she thought they were stars, but then she realized they were moving. Ships were coming down from space, and they were coming fast. "We need to get out of here," Elena said. Now, but it was too late. The first alien ship landed near their camp with a sound like thunder. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, made of crystal that sang in the wind. From it came beings that looked like they were carved from living gemstones. The second ship landed on the other side of the dig site. It was dark and moved like it was alive. From it came creatures that looked like a cross between spiders and soldiers, all moving together like parts of the same machine. The third ship didn't land at all. It hovered in the air above them, crackling with energy. Beings made of pure light floated down from it, their forms shifting and dancing like flames. Elena and her team stood frozen as the three groups of aliens faced each other across the dig site. The tension in the air was so thick that Elena could feel it pressing against her skin. Each group was watching the others, waiting to see who would make the first move. Then one of the crystal beings spoke. Its voice sounded like music, but Elena could somehow understand the words. "This place is sacred to our people," the crystal being said. "The first ones built it for us. We claim it by right of blood and faith." The insect creatures responded with a sound like 1,000 voices speaking at once. "The great teachers left this as a gift for their chosen children. We are those children. This place belongs to us." The beings of light pulsed brighter, and their voice came like the sound of wind through leaves. "The Lightbringers promised they would return to us. This tomb holds their promise. We will not let others take what is ours." Elena realized with growing horror that all three alien races thought the tomb belonged to them, and from the way they were positioning themselves around the dig site, she could tell that they were willing to fight for it. The discovery that was supposed to be the greatest find in human history had just become the spark that might start a war among the stars. The three alien fleets hung in space above the planet like angry storm clouds. Elena could see them through the strange viewing device she had found in the tomb. Each fleet had dozens of ships, and more were arriving every hour. The crystal ships of the Zephyrians gleamed like jewels in the sunlight. The dark vessels of the Korthak moved in perfect formation like a school of metal fish. The energy ships of the Ethereals flickered and danced, barely visible except for the lightning that arced between them. Elena knew that a battle could start at any moment. The three alien races were talking to each other, but their words were getting angrier with each passing hour. Each group insisted that the tomb belonged to their people alone. "Professor, I think I figured out how to work this thing," Jake said from across the tomb. He was standing in front of a wall covered with glowing symbols. When he touched them in the right order, pictures appeared in the air above his hands. Elena hurried over to see what he had found. The pictures showed a man in strange armor standing on a hill looking up at the stars. The man looked completely human, but his armor was more advanced than anything Elena had ever seen. It seemed to be alive, shifting and changing as she watched. "Can you make it show us more?" Elena asked. Jake nodded and touched another symbol. The picture changed to show the same man, but now he was inside a great ship flying through space. The ship was huge, bigger than any city Elena had ever seen. Through its windows she could see stars rushing past like drops of rain. "My God," Sarah whispered. "How old is this recording?" The picture changed again. Now it showed the man landing on a world covered in crystal formations. Waiting for him were beings that looked exactly like the Zephyrians who had landed near their camp. But these crystal beings looked smaller and simpler, like children compared to the ones outside. Elena watched in amazement as the human man began teaching the crystal beings. He showed them how to shape their crystal bodies into new forms. He taught them how to sing to each other across great distances. He helped them build their first ships to travel between the crystal mountains of their world. "This is impossible," Elena said. "Humans have never been to that world. We've never even seen beings like that before today." But the pictures kept showing more impossible things. The same human visited world after world. On a dark planet covered in hives, he taught insect creatures how to share their thoughts and work together. On a world made of storms and lightning, he showed energy beings how to take solid form when they needed to. Jake touched more symbols, and the pictures went faster. Elena saw the human helping dozens of different alien races. He taught them science and art and philosophy. He helped them solve problems and end wars. Everywhere he went, the aliens looked at him with love and respect. "He's like a teacher," Sarah said. "A teacher for the whole galaxy." Elena nodded, but she was confused. "But this has to be thousands of years old? Maybe tens of thousands. Humans weren't even civilized that long ago, let alone traveling between stars." The pictures suddenly stopped, and new symbols appeared on the wall. Jake touched them and a voice began to speak. It was the voice of the man in the armor, and somehow Elena could understand his words even though they sounded like no language she had ever heard. "My name is Marcus Chen," the voice said. "I am a commander in the Human Defense Corps, and this is my final log entry. The enemy has found us. The Void Hunters have returned to our galaxy, and this time they are too strong for us to fight directly." Elena felt her heart skip a beat. A human name. A human voice. But the recording had to be ancient. "We have tried everything," Marcus continued. "Our fleets are destroyed. Our worlds are falling one by one. The creatures we helped raise and teach are not ready to face this enemy. They are still too young, too innocent. The Void Hunters feed on life itself, and they will consume everything in this galaxy if we cannot stop them." The voice paused, and Elena could hear sadness in it. "So we have decided to make the ultimate sacrifice. Using technology that will scatter us across time and space, we will go into deep sleep and wait. We will wait until our children are strong enough to help us fight. We will wait until humanity itself has grown wise enough to understand what must be done." Elena's hands were shaking. This recording was changing everything she thought she knew about human history. "I am the last," Marcus said. "My ship is damaged and I cannot reach the main sleep chambers where my people wait. But I can build one here on this dead world where the enemy will never think to look. I will sleep here and wait for the day when someone finds me. When that day comes, when my tomb is opened and its signal goes out to the stars, it will mean that the time has come to wake up and fight again." The recording ended, but new pictures appeared. These showed a star map with hundreds of points of light scattered across the galaxy. Each point marked the location of a sleeping human waiting to be awakened. "There are hundreds of them," Jake whispered. "Hundreds of humans sleeping all across the galaxy, waiting for someone to wake them up." Elena stared at the map in shock. Then she looked at the crystal box in the center of the tomb. Inside it was Marcus Chen, the man from the recording. He had been sleeping here for thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands, waiting for this moment. "That's why the aliens are here," she said suddenly. "They remember being taught by humans like Marcus. They remember the humans who helped them grow and learn. They've been waiting for their teachers to come back." Sarah pointed at the viewing device that showed the alien fleets above them. "But they don't know that their teachers are human. They think humans are just another young race like they used to be." Elena nodded. The three alien races thought the first ones, or great teachers or lightbringers, were their own ancient ancestors. They had no idea that their beloved teachers had been human beings from Earth. "We have to tell them," Elena said. "We have to explain who Marcus really is." But even as she said it, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. The three alien fleets were already preparing for battle. Each group was convinced that the tomb belonged to them alone. Would they listen to a young human scientist trying to explain an impossible truth? Jake was studying the star map more closely. "Professor, look at this. The map is showing something else." Elena looked where he was pointing. At the edge of the galaxy, dark spots were appearing on the map. The spots were moving inward toward the center of the galaxy, like drops of ink spreading through water. "What are those?" Sarah asked. Elena felt a chill run through her body. She thought about Marcus's words about an enemy that fed on life itself. An enemy called the Void Hunters. "I think," she said quietly, "those are the reason Marcus and his people went to sleep, and I think they're coming back." Above them, the first shots of the war were fired as the alien fleets could no longer hold back their anger and suspicion. Energy beams and crystal spears and living metal projectiles began to fill the space around the planet. The battle for the tomb had begun, and none of the fighters knew that their actions were being watched by something dark and hungry at the edge of the galaxy, something that had been waiting for exactly this moment to return. The war above the planet was getting worse by the hour. Elena could feel the ground shake every time one of the alien weapons hit something. Through the tomb's viewing device, she watched crystal spears pierce through dark metal hulls while energy beams turned ships into clouds of glowing gas. "They're destroying each other," Jake said, his voice full of horror, "all because they think this tomb belongs to them." Elena was trying to work the tomb's controls, hoping to find a way to contact the fighting aliens. She had to make them understand the truth about Marcus Chen and the sleeping humans. But every time she touched the symbols on the wall, she got more pictures of the ancient past instead of a way to talk to the present. "Professor," Sarah called out from across the tomb. "Something's happening to the crystal box." Elena turned and saw that Sarah was right. The crystal box that held Marcus Chen was starting to glow brighter. Cracks of light were spreading across its surface like lightning frozen in glass. The humming sound that filled the tomb was getting louder. "Everyone get back," Elena said. She didn't know what was happening, but she could feel the power building in the air around them. Suddenly, a massive explosion shook the planet. One of the Korthak ships had broken through the Zephyrian defenses and fired directly at the surface. The energy beam hit the ground near the tomb, sending waves of force through the ancient metal walls. The crystal box couldn't handle the shock. With a sound like 1,000 bells ringing at once, it cracked open. Light poured out of it so bright that Elena had to cover her eyes. When the light faded, Marcus Chen was sitting up. Elena's first thought was that he looked exactly like a normal human. After seeing all the ancient recordings, she had expected him to look different somehow. But Marcus just looked like a man in his 30s with short dark hair and tired eyes. The only thing strange about him was his armor, which seemed to be moving slightly like it was breathing. Marcus looked around the tomb, then at Elena and her team. When he spoke, his voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in a very long time. "How long?" he asked. "How long what?" Elena replied, her voice barely a whisper. "How long have I been asleep?" Elena swallowed hard. "We think maybe 50,000 years." Marcus closed his eyes and was quiet for a long moment. When he opened them again, Elena could see pain in them. 50,000 years, he repeated. "And the galaxy is still at war." "You can understand us," Jake said in amazement. "You're speaking our language." Marcus touched a spot on his armor, and Elena saw a small device light up. "Translation matrix," he said. "Standard equipment for human defense corps officers. I can speak and understand any language in the galactic database." Another explosion shook the tomb, this one closer than before. Dust fell from the ceiling and some of the lights on the walls flickered. "The aliens fighting up there," Elena said quickly. "They're fighting over this tomb. They think it belongs to their ancestors, but they don't know. They don't know that you're human." Marcus stood up slowly, his armor helping him move. Elena could see that he was still weak from his long sleep, but he was getting stronger with each passing minute. "Show me," he said. Elena led him to the viewing device and showed him the battle raging in space above them. Marcus watched the 3 alien fleets destroying each other, and his expression grew darker with each passing moment. "Zephyrians, Korthak, and Ethereals," he said. "I remember them. When I last saw them, they were young races, just learning to build cities and work together. Now look at them. They've grown so much. You really taught them?" Sarah asked. "All those recordings we saw, they were real?" Marcus nodded. "My people and I spent thousands of years helping young races grow and learn. We thought of them as our children. We wanted them to be ready for the day when the real enemy returned." "The Void Hunters," Elena said. Marcus looked at her sharply. "You know about them?" "Only what we heard in your recording. You said they feed on life itself." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then he spoke in a voice so serious that it made Elena's skin crawl. "The Void Hunters come from outside our galaxy. They're not like any life form you can imagine. They don't just kill living things. They devour the very concept of life itself. When they're done with a world, it doesn't just die. It becomes a place where life can never exist again." Another explosion, and this time Elena could hear the sound of metal tearing. One of the alien ships had been hit badly. "They're killing each other," Jake said. "Just like in your time." Marcus shook his head. "No, it's worse than that. The fighting among the young races is what brought the Void Hunters to our galaxy in the first place. The Hunters are drawn to conflict and chaos. The more war there is, the easier it becomes for them to find us." Elena felt her heart sink. "So by fighting over your tomb, they're sending a signal to the Hunters that the galaxy is ready to be harvested again," Marcus finished. As if his words had triggered something, lights began flashing all around the tomb. The star map that showed the locations of the sleeping humans suddenly came alive. Points of light all across the galaxy began blinking in sequence. "What's happening?" Sarah asked. Marcus was staring at the map with wide eyes. "The other tombs. They're all activating. The signal from this tomb is waking up my people all across the galaxy." Elena watched as hundreds of lights began pulsing on the map. Each light represented a human who had been sleeping for 50,000 years, waiting for this moment. "That's good, right?" Jake asked. "Now you'll have your army back." But Marcus looked worried instead of happy. "Yes, my people are waking up. But so is something else." He pointed to the edge of the map where Elena had seen the dark spots before. Now those spots were moving faster. rushing toward the center of the galaxy like a tide of darkness. "The Void Hunters," Marcus said. "They've been waiting and watching from outside the galaxy. The activation of the tombs and the war above us, it's like sending up a flare that says, 'Come and feed.' They know we're here now, and they're coming back to finish what they started 50,000 years ago." The tomb shook again, and Elena could hear the sound of ships landing outside. The alien armies were bringing the battle to the surface now. "We have to stop the fighting," Elena said. "We have to make them understand that they're all on the same side." Marcus nodded and started walking toward the entrance of the tomb. "You're right. But first I need to show them something that will get their attention." "What?" Elena asked. Marcus smiled, and for the first time Elena could see the confidence that had once made him a leader among the stars. "I'm going to show them their teacher has come home." Outside the tomb, the three alien armies were setting up positions around the entrance. Crystal warriors, insect soldiers, and beings of pure energy were all preparing to fight for the right to enter the sacred place. None of them were ready for what was about to walk out of that entrance. None of them were ready to learn that their most ancient and beloved teachers had been human all along, and none of them knew that while they had been fighting each other, an enemy that could destroy all life in the galaxy had begun its journey home. Marcus walked out of the tomb entrance with Elena and her team following close behind. The alien armies that had been preparing to fight each other suddenly stopped and stared. None of them had expected to see humans emerge from their sacred site. The Zephyrian commander was the first to speak. Its crystal body rang like a bell as it moved closer. "Small beings," it said in its musical voice, "you have disturbed a holy place. Step aside so that we may claim what belongs to our people." Marcus stepped forward, and Elena saw his armor begin to glow with soft light. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly across the battlefield. "I am Commander Marcus Chen of the Human Defense Corps," he said. "This tomb is mine. I built it 50,000 years ago before I went to sleep." The alien armies murmured in confusion. The Korthak soldiers clicked and chittered to each other in their shared mind voice. The ethereal beings pulsed with brighter energy. "Impossible," said the Korthak leader, its voice like 1,000 insects speaking as one. "The great teachers were not small, weak creatures like you. They were mighty beings who could shape worlds with their thoughts." Marcus smiled sadly. "We were never as mighty as you remember. We were just people trying to do the right thing." He touched a control on his armor, and suddenly the air around him filled with holographic images. The aliens gasped as they saw recordings of Marcus and other humans teaching their ancestors thousands of years ago. "We came to your worlds when you were young," Marcus said to the Zephyrians. "We taught you how to sing across the crystal networks of your homeworld. We showed you how to grow your bodies into new shapes." The Zephyrian commander's crystal form began to dim with shock. "The first ones? You are saying you are the first ones?" "We came to your hive worlds," Marcus said to the Korthak. "We taught your people how to share thoughts across great distances. We helped you learn to work together as one mind." The Korthak soldiers began making distressed noises. Their shared consciousness was struggling to accept what they were hearing. "And we visited your energy storms," Marcus said to the ethereals. "We showed your people how to take solid form when you needed to touch the physical world. We taught you how to build ships from captured lightning." The ethereal beings flickered and danced in agitation. Their leader spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. "If this is true, if the Lightbringers were humans, then why did you leave us? Why did you abandon your children?" Marcus's expression grew heavy with old pain. "Because something was coming to destroy all of you, something that we couldn't defeat by fighting it directly." He changed the holographic display to show the edge of the galaxy. Elena saw the dark spots she had noticed before, but now they were much larger and moving faster toward the center. "The Void Hunters," Marcus said. "They come from outside our galaxy. They feed on life itself, consuming not just living things but the very possibility of life. When they're done with the world, nothing can ever live there again." The alien armies were quiet now, listening intently. Even their ships in orbit had stopped firing at each other. 50,000 years ago they came to our galaxy for the first time, Marcus continued. "We fought them with everything we had. Our great ships, our most powerful weapons, the combined armies of 100 worlds. But they were too strong. They destroyed our fleets and began consuming our worlds one by one." Elena watched the faces of the alien soldiers as they listened. She could see fear growing in their eyes. "We realized that we couldn't win by fighting them the way we were," Marcus said. "So we made a desperate plan. Using technology that pushed the very limits of what was possible, we scattered ourselves across the galaxy in deep sleep chambers. We would wait until our children, the races we had helped to grow, were strong enough to help us fight. But why didn't you tell us? The Zephyrian commander asked. Why didn't you prepare us for this enemy? Marcus shook his head. Because you weren't ready. You were still too young, too innocent. The Void Hunters are drawn to fear and despair. If you had known about them, if you had spent thousands of years living in terror of their return, that fear would have made it easier for them to find you. The Korthak leader spoke up. And now? Are we ready now? Marcus looked at the 3 alien armies, then up at the ship still fighting in orbit. You're stronger than you were 50,000 years ago. You've built great civilizations and learned to travel between the stars, but you're still fighting each other instead of working together. And that fighting. He pointed to the holographic display showing the dark tide approaching from the galaxy's edge. That fighting is what brought them back. Elena felt her stomach drop as she understood. The war over the tomb, it's what they were waiting for. The Void Hunters feed on conflict and chaos, Marcus explained. They've been watching from outside the galaxy, waiting for signs that the races inside are weak and divided. When they detected the signals from the awakening tombs and saw the wars breaking out over them, they knew it was time to return. The alien commanders looked at each other with dawning horror. They had been so focused on claiming the tomb for their own people that they hadn't realized they were playing right into the enemy's hands. How long do we have? The ethereal leader asked. Marcus studied the holographic display. The dark spots were moving faster now, like an infection spreading through healthy tissue. Based on their current speed, I'd say 6 months. Maybe less, and what do we do? The Zephyrian commander asked. How do we fight an enemy that feeds on life itself? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of 50,000 years of planning. We use the one advantage we have now that we didn't have before. He said, we have unity. The races of this galaxy have grown strong and wise. If we can work together, all of us, including modern humanity, we might be able to do what we couldn't do alone. Elena stepped forward. Modern humanity? You mean people from Earth? Marcus nodded. When I went to sleep, humanity was already starting to explore the stars. By now, I assume your people have spread to other worlds. Not many, Elena admitted. We have colonies on a few planets, but nothing like what you're describing from the old days. That's all right, Marcus said. What matters is that humanity is still growing and learning. The fresh perspective of a young race might be exactly what we need to find a new way to fight the Hunters. He turned back to the alien commanders. Will you help us? Will you put aside your old conflicts and work together to save the galaxy? The 3 leaders looked at each other. Elena could see thousands of years of mistrust and competition in their eyes, but she could also see fear of the approaching darkness. We will help, the Zephyrian commander said finally. The first ones taught us to value life above all else. We will not let life die in this galaxy. The great teachers showed us the strength of unity, the Korthak leader added. We will unite our thoughts with yours. The Lightbringers gave us the power to change form and adapt, the ethereal leader said. We will adapt to face this new challenge. Marcus smiled for the first time since waking up. Then we have a chance. It won't be easy and many of us won't survive what's coming, but together we might be able to protect the galaxy we all love. Above them, the alien fleet stopped firing at each other and began moving into a joint formation. Across the galaxy, more humans were waking up from their 50,000-year sleep, ready to rejoin the fight. And at the edge of the galaxy, the Void Hunters sensed the growing unity among their prey and increased their speed. The race to save the galaxy had begun. 3 months had passed since Marcus woke up and the galaxy was preparing for war. Elena stood on the bridge of the massive ship that had once been Marcus's command vessel, now restored and updated with technology from all the allied races. Through the viewports, she could see the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Crystal ships from the Zephyrian worlds floated alongside the dark living vessels of the Korthak. Energy-based ethereal craft danced through space between human warships that had been built using designs found in the ancient tombs. Even more amazing were the new ships, vessels that combined technology from all the races working together. Status report, Marcus said as he approached Elena. In the 3 months since his awakening, he had changed. The weariness in his eyes had been replaced by determination. and his ancient armor had been modified with new technology that made it seem more alive than ever. The last of the human tombs activated 2 days ago, Elena reported. We now have over 300 awakened Defense Corps officers spread across the fleet. Earth's colonies have sent every ship they can spare. The alien homeworlds are protected by combined defense forces. Marcus nodded. And the hunters? Elena's expression grew serious. They'll be here within the week. Our scouts report that they've consumed 17 star systems on their way in. Nothing's left of those worlds, not even the ability for life to exist there again. The thought made Elena shiver. The Void Hunters didn't just destroy life. They devoured the very concept of it. Where they passed, space itself became poisoned against the possibility of living things. Are we ready? She asked. Marcus looked out at the Allied fleet. Ships from dozens of worlds floated in perfect formation, their crews working together despite thousands of years of separation. As ready as we can be. But Elena, I need you to understand something. This isn't going to be like the wars your history books describe. The Hunters don't fight the way normal enemies do. Elena had seen recordings of the ancient battles against the Void Hunters. The enemy didn't use ships or weapons in any way that made sense. They were like living darkness that moved through space, consuming everything in their path. How do we fight something like that? She asked. Together, Marcus said simply. That's the one thing we learned 50,000 years ago. Alone, each race is just food for the Hunters. But together, working as one, we become something they can't easily digest. Alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Elena looked at her instruments and felt her blood turn cold. They're here, she announced to the bridge crew. On the main viewing screen, space itself began to change. The stars started to dim and flicker, as if something was eating the light itself. Then Elena saw them, shapes of absolute darkness moving between the stars. The Void Hunters had arrived. All ships, this is Marcus Chen. The ancient commander's voice echoed through the communication system. Today we fight not just for our own lives, but for the right of life itself to exist in this galaxy. Remember your training, trust your allies, and show these creatures that the races of this galaxy will never surrender. The first wave of hunters flowed toward the Allied fleet like a tide of living night. Elena watched in horror as they moved, their forms constantly shifting and changing. They looked like holes in reality itself. Zephyrian squadrons, begin crystal matrix formation, Marcus ordered. Korthak forces, prepare the mind link amplifiers. Ethereals, charge the energy barriers. Elena watched in amazement as the alien forces responded with perfect coordination. The crystal ships of the Zephyrians began to sing, their music creating patterns of light that seemed to confuse the approaching hunters. The Korthak vessels linked their shared consciousness into a network that spanned the entire fleet, allowing instant communication and coordination. The ethereal craft wove curtains of pure energy that formed barriers against the darkness. Human forces, Marcus continued, activate the new weapons. This was the moment Elena had been waiting for. In the months of preparation, human scientists working with alien technicians had developed something that had never existed before. Weapons that could actually hurt the void. Hunters, the human ships fired streams of what looked like liquid starlight. When the beams hit the hunters, the creatures recoiled and screamed with voices that sounded like the death of worlds. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Void Hunters were taking damage. It's working, Elena shouted. The life energy amplifiers are actually hurting them. The weapons were based on a simple but revolutionary idea. Instead of trying to destroy the Hunters with conventional weapons, the Allied forces were hitting them with concentrated life energy, the very thing the Hunters consumed. It was like forcing a fire to eat so much fuel that it choked on it. But the Hunters were learning. The dark shapes began to move differently, flowing around the life energy beams and striking back with tendrils of pure void. When those tendrils touched Allied ships, they didn't just destroy them. They erased them from existence entirely. We're losing ships on the outer perimeter, Elena reported. The Hunters are adapting to our weapons. Marcus was studying the battle display with intense concentration. Signal the reserve forces. It's time for Phase 2. Elena watched as thousands of small ships suddenly appeared at the edge of the battle. These weren't warships. They were civilian vessels from every world in the Alliance. Traders, explorers, colony ships, even personal spacecraft. All of them had been modified with the same life energy amplifiers as the military vessels. What are they doing? Elena asked. Something the Hunters won't expect, Marcus said with a grim smile. 50,000 years ago, we tried to fight them with our strongest warriors and our biggest weapons. But the hunters feed on aggression and conflict. This time, we're fighting them with something different. The civilian ships began broadcasting on all frequencies, but instead of battle cries or military orders, they were sending out something else entirely. Music from the Zephyrian crystal worlds, poetry from human colonies, mathematical theorems that the Korthak found beautiful, ethereal dances translated into light patterns. Their broadcasting culture, Elena realized, art and beauty and all the things that make life worth living. The effect on the Void Hunters was immediate and dramatic. The creatures began to writhe and twist as if in pain. Their forms started to become unstable, flickering between dimensions. The hunters consume life, Marcus explained as he watched the enemy forces beginning to retreat. But they can't process the meaning of life. Beauty, art, love, hope. These things are like poison to them. Elena watched in amazement as the tide of battle began to turn. The combined military and civilian forces of the Alliance were pushing the hunters back, not through superior firepower, but through the sheer, overwhelming force of everything that made life worth living. But just as victory seemed within reach, something changed. The remaining hunters suddenly stopped retreating and began to gather together in space. They were forming into a single massive shape like a dark star made of pure void. What are they doing? Elena asked. Marcus's face went pale. They're combining into a consumption core. If that thing reaches critical mass, it will devour this entire star system in minutes. The Allied fleet turned all its weapons on the growing dark mass, but their attacks barely seemed to scratch it. The core was growing larger and darker with each passing second. We need more power, Marcus said. More life energy than any ship can generate. Elena looked around the bridge at the crew members, humans, Zephyrians, Korthak, and Ethereals, all working together. Suddenly she had an idea. What if we don't use ships? She said. What if we use ourselves? Marcus looked at her with understanding dawning in his eyes. A direct life energy projection. But that would mean... I know what it means, Elena said quietly. But it's the only way. Marcus nodded slowly, then opened communications to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Marcus Chen. We need volunteers for a final mission. Anyone who participates will be projecting their own life energy directly at the core. It will save the galaxy, but... He didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. Elena was the first to volunteer. Within minutes, thousands of others had joined her. Humans and aliens, military personnel and civilians, all willing to give their lives to protect the galaxy they loved. They linked their minds and spirits together in a network that spanned the entire fleet. Elena felt the consciousness of every volunteer flowing through her, their hopes, their dreams, their love for life itself. Together, they projected the combined life energy directly at the consumption core. The beam that emerged from their joined spirits was brighter than any star, more beautiful than any sunset, and filled with more love than any single being could contain. When it hit the core, the reaction was immediate. The dark mass screamed with the voice of a dying universe, then began to collapse in on itself. The other hunters, suddenly cut off from their power source, flickered and vanished like shadows when a light is turned on. Elena felt herself growing weaker as her life energy flowed into the beam. Around her, she could see others starting to fade as well. But she could also see something wonderful. The space where the hunters had been was filling with new light. Stars that had been dimmed were shining brightly again. Life was returning to the void.